Hello and welcome to Transforming Worlds.
Even if it makes a lot of sense, especially look at what's happening in the sustainability aspects of things. The number of barriers, psychological barriers, structural barriers, the economic barriers that we're finding are making the changes, despite the real objective need of change, the changes are becoming more and more difficult at a hard structural level. It is the anxiety of being in a place in which I cannot belong. And universal, I'm making that universal. And let me explain, is that what I noticed, plenty of smart people, a lot of action, there was no art, there was no poetry, there was no feeling, it was just action, meaningless action. Every single decision was made on, very basic, down-to-earth drives, about metric optimization or SEO or whatever. So all the promise of change and transformation, there was something missing. I was like trying to find that. Then I said, okay, I want to change this. I want to create value that actually makes sense for people, that can be part of people's life, like I used to do when I was an artist, that create reflection, that create provocations, that actually manage to connect in a meaningful, profound manner with people's lives.
In this episode, we speak to Alberto Barreiro, an expert in design, art, and strategic consulting, who brings nearly 3 decades of international experience into this conversation. Alberto began his career shaping global product strategy at Yahoo, working between London and Silicon Valley. Following that, he founded WebJam, an innovative B2C platform acclaimed as one of the top European startups of its time, serving clients like Microsoft, Unilever, and Global Radio. In London, Alberto excelled as Chief Experience Officer at ITV, the British television network. He held the same position at Grupo Prisa in Spain. He also established Meaning, his design agency, together with Grupo Barrabés, serving as the Chief Strategy Officer of the group. Subsequently, Alberto took on international roles as Chief Experience Officer in Los Angeles, USA at Intrago, as the Director of Experience Design at Samsung, where he developed the global marketing platform strategy, engaging with global clients. He is the Director of Transformation at The Cocktail, a WPP company, where he collaborates with many brands. In academia, Alberto imparts his knowledge as a master's professor at Elisava and Instituto de Empresa, and co-directs Become, together with Chaos Pilots in Denmark. Alberto's unique approach is centered on making transformation irresistible, aiming to craft a world that is more beautiful, useful, and meaningful. We have, together with Alberto, an incredible conversation about design, art, getting into design as an artist, what transformation really is about, and how it is important to be in the moment, stay with the trouble, and recognize what is truly beautiful and meaningful. Tune in. Welcome, Alberto, on Transforming Worlds. I'm so excited to have this very public conversation with you because we've had so many conversations outside of the screens, and I think you have amazing things to share.
Thanks, Carola. It's a pleasure and a responsibility as well. I mean, you are the authority on this topic, so I hope I have something interesting to say to you and your audience.
I'm sure you do. So tell us, what is transforming for you in your world these days?
Well, transforming is my title. I'm the Director of Creative Transformation here at VML The Cocktail. It's a consultancy and creative agency. The keyword is what you are transforming and why, and onto what. What is the result of transformation? And that's where my effort has been applied for the last few years, working on understanding how to move from where we are now into something that I believe is better. That's what I call transformation. And so transformation for me is maybe it's about releasing the anxiety I have around what I see in my day-to-day and trying to build a world in which I can belong. That's how I think I can define it. And by doing that, I try to transform everyone around me.
And I think you do, and you do so very well. But
Mm.
how did you get there? I mean, if we go really back in time, you grew up in Galicia in northern Spain. And probably, as you say, you were already curious with things that were changing around you. What led you to do the work you do today? What was your path like? What were you finding around you that made you think, hey, I want to work in this space. I want to make a difference here?
The thing is that I never, I have to be sincere with you. I mean, I never make choices about what I do. I found the life in front of me and I just take it. And the truth is that I didn't train myself as a consultant, as a designer, or as a leader within a corporation, whatever. I trained myself as an artist. I'm an artist. I always been an artist, and I actually realizing that I never stopped being an artist. And I studied fine arts in Galicia, and that led me to a brief but intense art career. And that moved me to made me change and homes and move to the UK. I live in London for more than 16, 17 years. So, and I was trained, and my brain is wired as the brain of an artist. I don't know how to understand the world in a different way. There is no way I could escape. I tried hard to escape from that. It's almost like a prison, a curse, being an artist, but I never managed to actually do it. And but so I moved to London as an artist and as practitioner. I was exhibiting around Europe. I had a short but intense and quite good career. I started doing art, exploring the implications, the conceptual implications of digital technologies in the 90s. What it meant to create with computers and digital images and pixels, and how that changed the way we perceive and understand the world. So that was my exploration. As I defined it in my first solo exhibition, I was trying to find the infinite between the zero and the one. It's the idea of the sublime within the discrete digital world. So that led me to understand digital technologies quite well, to be able to work as a design professor, doing computer-aided design, because that were the tools that I was using as an artist. So that led me to the world of design by accident. So I moved to London. In London, I needed money. So all of a sudden, I found myself working at the very core of the digital culture and the digital industry internationally. I became part of the international team of Yahoo in the good old times of Yahoo. I became the lead designer there. And very quickly, I started to fall in love with the idea of design. I saw in design something that I miss in the world of art, at least in the context of contemporary arts, which is that I found that art didn't have the impact that I needed. I was in love with the avant-garde art from the 20th century, especially at the beginning. The art was a little bit ahead of the game, was defining reality, not just reacting to it. And that didn't happen anymore in the contemporary arts scene. I lack this idea of pushing, this idea of activism. There was something that was missing in that world, and I thought design had that. Because at the time, and you share that experience as well, design was the space in which we were trying to rebuild the world, the relationships between people, the way we work, the culture, the media, everything happened around design. I believe, and maybe somebody in the audience can check this, I believe I was part of the first team in Europe with the user experience and design title in it. In the year 2000, 1999, 2000, I can remember. Who was when I was hired by Yahoo, I was a graphic user interface designer. And after a few months, we became UED. And I never heard about that title before. I didn't know what that meant. So I was lucky to be witnessing the beginning of something, the beginning of what happened if you put people at the center of the equation. How do you create value around the needs of people? So we have psychologists, anthropologists, we have, it was really cool. We were developing and understanding what that meant. And actually, I think we contribute to the creation of many of the standards that we use now on the way we navigate websites and this type of things. In fact, I became the designer of the Yahoo front page globally in the year 2004, I believe. And it was the most visited site at the time. And it was designed by me. So I was part of that. So of course I fell in love. The art was, slowly vanishing from but even so, I think I was trying to be an artist within the world of design and within the world of business. And that created some kind of friction, I believe. And that friction is what I never managed to resolve. That's why from that very moment, I was trying to solve that gap by transforming the world of business on something more meaningful, which is what I lack the most. Because the art is about, as I used to say, I mean, the artists are hackers of meaning. That's our material. It's not the colors of the stone or whatever.
But let's try and kind of bring all of this together, because there's a lot of things to sort of unpack and then reconnect. So you're saying art was lacking for you in your personal experience, the quality of impact of outcome that design has by the very definition of what design is. And as you know, the definition of design that I work with is the one from Herbert Simon, who said to design is to transform existing conditions into preferred ones. Well, he didn't say that. I paraphrase him a little bit, but that's the essence of what he was saying. And you're saying as an artist, there is this freedom perhaps to interpret, to reveal, to make happen through yourself, but it doesn't get me to the level that design does. So how do we connect the two into who you have become today? How does that inform the way you go about your life, your work, your business?
The thing is, design is an epistemology issue. I mean, design is somehow in between a way of seeing the world that is more utilitarian. There is a function to be performed. There is a need that you need to solve. There is something that upfront, while art doesn't need that. Art is not about solutions. It's not about future. It's not about doing things. It's about providing a meaningful connection with the world. It's about reconnection.
Look at that again, because epistemologically, design means to make a mark, to scratch, to make a mark. That is what design, as the origin of the word, is about. And I think that with time, and very much like the career you just described, we started realizing as designers that making a mark also meant leaving a mark, and therefore having an impact, which I think is really what distinguishes from the expressive need of the artist, who also makes marks, but more in an invitation to reflect, to ponder, to consider, to impress, to provoke, and then that's that.
But maybe we are also, I understand that. And design can be applied to everything. It's like an atmosphere almost. It can be, especially with that definition of Herbert Simon. But the truth is that we are not talking about design. We're talking design within a context.
Yes.
In this case, it's the context of capitalism. So that mark is what I have started question critically. And that's what I perceive now, that all this effort, because every single company that is hurting the planet and society has designers in it. They're design-centric companies. They design cars, they design drinks, they design phones, you name it. They are design-centric companies, are the more harmful companies in the world, you can say, quote unquote. Of course, it's not. But there is this mark of design has to be put into question based on the actual real outcomes of what we managed to do in the last 20, 30 years of a user-centric approach to design.
Yeah, I think it was in 1971, but anyway, in the 1970s, Victor Papanek famously said that industrial design was one of the most destructive professions, precisely because of that. But at the same time, and you started this podcast by talking about responsibility, at the same time, that brings responsibility. What was it for you that was your catalyst to say, okay, this is the space I want to be in, this is the responsibility I want to help carry, this is why I'm here? What is that for you?
Well, that is, again, it has this level of, I think it's more than something outside of me, is the anxiety of being in a place in which I cannot belong. And universal, I'm making that universal. And let me explain, is that what I notice when you walk, I remember that's almost a physical kind of feeling when I walk into the walls of a company like Yahoo. I was working globally, I was visiting Silicon Valley and working from there and stuff like that in the very good old times. There's plenty of smart people, a lot of action. There was no art, there was no poetry, there was no feeling. It was just action, meaningless action. Every single decision was made on, very basic, down-to-earth drives, about metric optimization or SEO or whatever. So all the promise of change and transformation, it was something missing. I was like trying to find that. Then I said, okay, I want to change this. I want to create value that actually makes sense for people, that can be part of people's life, like I used to do when I was an artist, that create reflection, that create provocations, that actually manage to connect in a meaningful, profound manner with people's lives. So that was my aim. And it was actually maybe because it was quite naive. I thought that was actually that people wanted. That if you lead a company, if you are and I became an entrepreneur as well. I have my own startups and my own agency. And so I really thought by heart that people had the will of creating value, real value, long-term value, meaningful value in people's life. Then it was the slow realization. It's like removing layers, and you end that at the end, sooner or later, that promise becomes, void. So in many senses, okay? So what I've been trying to do since I started to fill that gap is trying to build my own home within corporations. And that meant to change the way I work, therefore changing the way I work with the people surround me, trying to model those changes into new ways of doing, new ways of thinking, new methodologies, trying to create new products or services that actually have something that's worth saving. I, for example, discovered the world of purpose-driven design. I became I specialized on crafting purpose statements and creating strategies based on those purposes. So, and I did it for large corporations. Changing the culture within the company, you name it. There is a lot of things in which, okay, how can I build my own place here, a place in which I can belong, or someone like me can belong. And that skill that is very personal, almost intimate. It was for me the drive to think about what is wrong, what I find wrong in the organizations, and how can I improve that. And so that was somehow the driver. Is personal, but I think at the end, and I met people like you and many other people that for whatever reason, we share the same intuition and we share the same approach to work and do for whatever reason. In my case, the trigger is very intimate, it's internal. But that's, I think, what drove my career.
There are times where that hasn't come to fruition. One might say in a language that I don't like, but that exists, that you may have failed in some of these attempts. Can you share examples of that and what happened to you? Did it kind of confirm your determination to carry on through this path? Did it lead you to reflect on different ways of doing it? What happened when this longing of yours to find places where you want to belong, where you can belong, when you can be your full self and be of service to whatever it is that you're doing in the context of business, when it didn't work out, what happened then?
Well, I mean, I think I can say that it's a bit bold, but my whole career is a failure in the sense that as a program, let's say, of transformation, I've been working, for example, with, as I said before, crafting purpose statements and trying to implement those strategies within corporations, and then realizing that you cannot go that far. That is mostly very cosmetic, very superficial, and you will end touching something that cannot be changed, and that implies that the whole thing, it will be nice. I can see some of my statements printed on the walls of banks, but doesn't mean that the bank has changed, or the culture has changed, or the world has changed. It just means that it looks nicer, and you save your soul for a minute. So, and that's a harsh realization. I was a believer, and I guess you as well. And I remember there was a few years, especially before the pandemic, in which companies actually embrace the will to change and to move towards a more systemic a different approach to work and to produce and to become within the world with the world. And but it's true as well that for the last few years the masks has fallen, and there is a backlash on all that effort, even if it makes a lot of sense. Especially look at what's happening in the sustainability aspects of things. The number of barriers, psychological barriers, structural barriers, the economic barriers that we're finding are making the changes, despite the real objective need of change, the changes are becoming more and more difficult at a hard structural level. And
Yes.
yeah. So
Because it happens at the structural level, because what is changing, and as the world transformation indicates, is the form, it's the structure. And
yeah,
therefore, it's not by coincidence that we are finding these barriers, which you might say those things were always there, but in a previous form, they worked synchronously with the systems we were a part of, and so we didn't question the form. Now we are at a pivotal moment when we start questioning the form, and then we experience it as a barrier. But it's actually a possibility to transcend that barrier that is being presented to us, which is why going at it with artist philosophy allows you to see the contrast, the funniness, perhaps even in a kind of playful manner, of the silliness of the things that we have invented. I know you, in your artist work, you are a big fan of Marcel Duchamp. And you were inspired by the work of Duchamp because of this search for synthesis, for purity, for essence, for going beyond those structures and those barriers. How was that journey for
yeah,
you?
yeah. Let me. Indeed, but what I'm realizing now, I mean, there is a idea of transformation, and maybe it has something to do with that and the world of art. It's something I have in my mind actually today, thinking while I was coming to the office today. The fact that this change, this breaking boundaries, it doesn't mean that you're moving forward.
No.
It doesn't mean that you are progressing or growing or changing towards something, towards a future. It means that you are sometimes, and that's a way of reading Duchamp, it's not that Duchamp was a more futuristic or more avant-garde in the sense of what can be a startup now. He wasn't disruptive. He was deep. He was finding truths that were hidden there in front of us. So, and that has to do with what we were talking about before. I mean, transformation as a program is what, for me, failed. But transformation, at least in a different meaning, still works at a more intimate level. That means the value that you can create with a conversation, the hack that you can add to a product that will do something that you shouldn't expect upfront, but it will create some nice wink and complicity with the user, with people. I don't know, the influence you may have with somebody that will change the way an institution think about the city. Little hacks, little things. And more, it's not transformation as something that you kind of perform, but it's more about, you think in terms of the future, the progress, the move, something that is always a way of today. It's something that is performed today in the small things, in the way you breathe. It's a process. There is no transformation. It's a constant process of becoming.
Yes, yes. It's a constant process of becoming more embodied, realizing things, reflecting about what we want to do about that. I think that that is very much the essence of design as opposed to art, where art raises a question and leaves you with it. Design invites the reflection and the action that ensue from that. And those changes don't have to be grand or sweeping or, literally world changing. But we are in a time in which, because our systems are collapsing, because our world is asking of us that we have a different mindset, a different attitude, and a different way of being in the world and doing in the world, this transformation is, as you say, intimate, because it affects our world models, our consciousness, our awareness of who we are, what we do, and why we do it in ways that are unprecedented. And therefore, it becomes much more important from a business point of view to help clear that path, to help make that possible. I am a true believer, as you know, that business is an extremely good conduit for this. We can try and educate people into this kind of thinking. We can try and regiment from a government perspective through rules and regulations and must-dos and impositions really onto the way people are going to think. But that has never worked in the history of mankind. We move when we are moved, when we are involved emotionally, when it becomes this intimate aspect that you talk about. And I know for you, a guiding principle in this is the concept of beauty. How does that affect your work?
It's okay, maybe the only way to approach these challenges is not so much about thinking about how to become something else, but how to make sense of everything that you do today in the present. And that's about connection. It's about, actually, this conversation makes sense. What is this? What is the value on this exchange that we are having right now, on what I can do exactly now after this call, meeting somebody, doing something. So I'm kind of redefining or resignifying this process as a sense-making process, trying to keep it in the present.
Yes, back in the day, many, many years ago, when I had just published Change Ahead, a book that you read and in which I introduce a model with the letters SAIL, sail, as in sailing and navigating change. The S of that is sense making, because when change becomes so complex, all over the place, multifaceted, fractal as it is today, we first have to try and make sense of it all as best we can before we jump to conclusions, which is the A of analyzing, before we invent, which is the I of sail, and in order for us to learn, which is the L of sail. This process of sailing is really guiding my work as well. And as someone very inspired by Herbert Simon, I do want to challenge what you just said. Herbert Simon is a possibilitarian from the now, because he says, look at the existing conditions and transform them into preferred ones in the next now. The future does not exist. I know you and I agree on this. There is no such thing as the future. Where is it? Can we touch it? Can we feel it? Can we be with it? No, we can't. And so the transformative capacity is about how do we go from here to a next situation, a next now moment in which conditions have changed for the betterment of everyone involved.
Yeah.
And this is really, really important, I know, also in your work, because when you talk about things like beauty, which is a concept typically
Yeah.
associated to art in one way or another, and we raise it to the level of values, then beauty becomes a guiding principle, precisely
Absolutely.
because what we experience is that, hey, no wonder, it makes
Yeah.
sense. It feels right, right in a non-polarizing manner. It
Yeah.
feels something
Yeah.
that we want to be a part of, we want to engage in, we want to believe in, we want to make possible. I think that this is so critical in your work as well. So I really would love for you to elaborate a bit on the idea
Yeah.
of beauty, and also I know you follow very much the work of Nathan Shedroff, and how values can guide these processes as well.
Absolutely. I mean, the idea of beauty, basically in just 3 weeks, one of the tools I use for this process of, let's call it transformation, that you know, and you've been invited here for a couple of times. Sadly, you couldn't come over. My best tool, I think, the most impactful one is an event I put together every year as a provocation. We're in a world of technology. My colleagues are engineers, designers, advertising creatives, and they have very down-to-earth needs that we work hard to solve every single day. So my mandate is that I impose to myself is to create a space to stop for a minute and challenge our own day-to-day, our code, the way we work, why we do it, etc. So every year in September, we put together an event in which we bring thinkers, anthropologists, psychologists, you name it. And every year we have a different topic that we develop. And it has been and I do it through inspiration and provocation. I do it, let's say last year, the name of the event was called Love. So, and to call an event in the world of technology love is by itself a provocation. But it made sense. It was about relationships, building up relationships, and how that meant, and what that meant for businesses as well, of course. So anyway, and by doing this, I shake a little bit the company, and things start to happen by themselves. It's an indirect way of transforming, but it works very, very well. So, and this year I have the chance of going a step beyond that. And I managed to set a partnership with Festival de las Ideas, which is a festival of ideas. It's the largest philosophy festival here in Spain. And this year they are bringing the 3 high-level philosophers to our space, and we will invite corporate executives. So trying to create this space of meeting, thinking, reflection, and business. And the beauty is that this year the topic is the labyrinth. That's um, the philosophical topic that is going to be explored by, I don't know, 50, 100, I don't know how many philosophers they are bringing to Madrid, international philosophers, first, the very top ones. And so the way we approach it from the business perspective, and how we can translate the idea of labyrinth into the world of business, is that we, designers, let's talk from the design perspective, and technologists, creatives, we are very good at transforming the labyrinth into something you can inhabit. So my philosophical approach here is not about getting out of the labyrinth, it's about learning how to inhabit it.
Yes.
And by doing that, you are actually dissolving, that labyrinth. So the labyrinth is the world we live in. It's a world of complexity, of increased uncertainty and danger. Is the world of AI, is the world of climate change, is the world of polarization in politics. We are in the middle of hard, difficult labyrinth in which many questions are labyrinthic. So they're difficult to answer, too complex, there is no clear solution for anything. That's where we live. In fact, I did a very good exercise. We're publishing a little book with interviews with colleagues about what is the labyrinth that you see in front of you in your day-to-day. organizations,
And
technology,
especially
whatever.
like the attitude inside of the labyrinth, right? Because the human reaction to a labyrinth is trying to get out as fast as possible, trying to
Yeah,
resolve it as fast as possible. And perhaps there is so much value in being in that space of feeling disoriented, feeling lost. That is a very rich space as
yeah,
well for yeah, sensing.
exactly. So that's what we thought. I mean, man, we are designers. What the hell? We know how to make this labyrinth a home. So, and that changes the frame of the problem, the questions that you make yourself, etc. And you start to see the clouds ahead and the blue of the sky a little bit. You're starting to look up and seeing the labyrinth in a different manner. Anyway, the thing is that our proposal is how to learn to inhabit the labyrinth through what we do. And we identify three key areas or three capabilities, let's say. I don't know how to call them, but actually the event is scripted through these three areas. One is sense making, so how to connect back with the labyrinth, what it means to be there, what is the issues that we're facing. Let's look to the face of, the impact of industries and whatever, or let's see, and trying to reconnect with the issues in a sincere and meaningful manner, connecting with real values, understanding that we should ask ourselves, why are we doing what we are doing? This type of questions, it's more very philosophical, but at the end of the day, it's very practical as well. It's something that you can practice in your day-to-day. So this is one, that's the first part, sense making. The second one is beauty, the one that you mentioned.
Yes.
And I understand beauty, the definition I use is the recognition of the intrinsic value that you have ahead of you, in front of you. So it's about talking about whatever, not from the utilitarian value, the extractive value that you may see, but from the perspective of the value that it has by itself.
Yeah.
It's what we are doing here. There is no exchange in terms of utilitarian value. I don't know where this conversation is going, but it's needed. And I love being here, you love being here, and we can connect because of that. That's both an exercise for sense making. We're trying to make sense of something together, the idea of transformation, but at the same time, it's a space of beauty because I'm recognizing you're recognizing me, and we're recognizing together the value of this conversation.
Yeah.
We're trying to create beauty of it. So, and that means going back to the craft, to the care of what you do, to the things that you present and why you do it. I mean, the way you work, the things you do, is about, again, it's another reflection in which the idea of value is detached from the utilitarian extractive value that drives the decision making normally in organizations. You're going a step before and trying to connect from that perspective. And the third one is authenticity, is going back to what's real. To this connection, this exercise of recognition and sense making has to be done, face to face, whatever, even if it's digitally, but it has to have some level of
Presence.
authentic presence and connection and vulnerability and everything that meant, in order to really connect in a more, again, meaningful manner. So the event about how to learn to inhabit the labyrinth is built around these three keywords or capabilities, sense making,
It's
beauty,
super
and
inspiring, but tell me something. How do you deal with cultural narratives? And by that I mean societal narratives, but also the culture within organizations and the business and the tech bros and the hierarchical structures that be, who may not be interested even in connecting in this way. So how do you go about welcoming them, creating a place where they can thrive, creating a sense of connection when that is not their primary impulse?
I think when you do these type of things, I have a great anecdote from last year. The event was called Love.
Yes.
And so a good friend of mine, who is a director of sales, specialized on technology. So he's all the time dealing with CTOs and engineers and stuff like that, with a cultural mindset, not just engineers, but business people mostly,
Yes.
that is very far away from something like that. And he told me, Alberto, we went for lunch and said, I have to tell you something. I was very embarrassed when I have to sell this to my clients, when I have to tell them to come to an event called Love. So I didn't dare to do it. He didn't dare to do it.
Yeah.
But when I saw the event, I felt embarrassed for what I thought before. So it's not harsh. I mean, when you bring people and you expose an engineer to a space in which they can think differently or question some things or talk to people that are different than themselves. Of course, there are people that will protect themselves from that vulnerability. As far, I mean, you cannot, I mean, not everyone has to be happy, it's fine. But there are some that actually will connect and they will be very thankful for that because it's like you're taking me seriously. You are considering me more than a client that can give you projects.
Yeah, they're being,
You're actually,
yeah.
it's like the idea of beauty. You're recognizing the intrinsic value of that person. So when they let themselves go, they love it. Not everyone will do it, but that's their problem, not mine. You
No,
know?
but as you said, it's not, it's a gradual thing, it's a evolutive thing, so it's evolving, right? And words that finish with ing in English are unfinished. They keep going. And so maybe next year, someone who came to new realizations in the first event is going to bring 3 new friends, and then the year after that, more friends, and then maybe the conversations are going to be happening outside of the event. And with that, we help transform each other by sharing these realizations in very human ways. You would consider that to be a success story, at least I do, by the way you're telling that. What other measures of success do you have to kind of continue to have a feeling for the impact of the work that you do?
It's about qualitative growth as an individual, as an organization. It's about adding gravitas on what you do is becoming important in the sense that you are providing something of real value, something that is meaningful for society, for the employees, in the way you deliver it, in the way you work, in the value you create. That's for me the measurement is, are you important? Will people, is this famous study by Havas, it's quite old, but anyway, it's very, very meaningful, is people wouldn't care if, let's say, 85% of the companies will disappear tomorrow. People won't care at all. The measurement is, will people care if I disappear? You know, that's the only thing that matters.
And how
Will
do you
people?
know?
I know, it's asking. I mean, that's how Havas did it. They ask people, I mean, which companies do you care if they are not here anymore, you know? So that's a qualitative, but you can actually check it, you know? It's okay, people care, people stay in a company. Clients wants to work with you even, you know, and they want to have this genuine relationship with you for longer. There is trust, there is intimacy in the relationship with the client. There is recognition, not just in the market in terms of revenue, but also by institutions, by society. You become a key. I mean, there are little things that actually can help you to understand that you became something that's worth it. That's the only thing that matters.
And it necessitates sort of you constantly kind of tickling yourself and wondering how to continue to be relevant, how to continue to be meaningful. It's not a done deal. It's like
No.
transformation is also not a done deal. It's an ongoing process. And so here again, we're seeing this aspect of going through different phases of recognizing core elements of what defines you in relationship to everything else, everyone else, and what kind of sense are you creating in the world? Where do you look for inspiration, Alberto? Do you look at nature? Do you, obviously, you are in the technological domain. I know that you have a very deep relationship with your dog. Actually, if I could have interviewed your dog, I would have preferred him above you because I think he would be telling me incredible things about these philosophical discussions you and he have in the cafes of Madrid. But where is your inspiration coming from?
It's more about learning how to get rid of the noise. Trying to, that for me is more about kind of, I hate the word mindfulness because it became another tool of, exploitation of the self. But it's about reducing the interruptions and the noise. For me, inspiration is trying, as I said before, trying to build constantly a space that is meaningful for me, that has beauty, it helps me to become, or me and the people around me, slightly better every day, that is healthy. And there are getting inspired by the simplicity of life. Maybe this the big learning from my dog actually is how can I become my dog? How can I be satisfied and happy just by being there? With a little bit of food, a nice comfort space where I can rest and some walks. And my love, for example, my dog is a dog that loves terraces. He likes going for coffee with me. And that's my inspiration. I take always a notebook with me. We sit next to each other. We ask for coffee in the morning or a beer in the afternoon, and we stay there for hours. That's where action happens. There is no need for more, to be frank. And that's for me the end goal of transformation is to become, to stay in that space, which is meaningful, is rich, is beautiful.
You also are a columnist for Retina, which is a section of El País, the biggest newspaper in Spain, your country. And your most recent article talks about our enshittified world and what that means. Is there something you want to share about this most recent writing?
Yes, I mean this writing is almost nihilistic in the approach, consciously nihilistic. It's anti-design in somehow. Let me tell you the story about this article. It's very cool, in the sense that the topic is something that I mean I listen about the concept of enshittification in blog, in podcasts and stuff. I was reading about it, and it's a concept that it was delivered by a futurist in the States, and talks about a real, tangible process that happened within digital platforms. First, the digital platform creates real value for you. Is the seduction phase, is where designers have the most fun. Let's create stuff for people.
Posters and posters designers, let's be clear about that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, but you know that is the world we lived in. I personally was living in for a long time. Let's create something built around the needs of people and give them the world. Yeah. The next phase is once we users are part of these platforms, we are not the user anymore, we are the product. So we are sold our data, our attention to clients. It's a Facebook feed, and we become bombarded with advertising and our data flows around and et cetera, which is the business model of most platforms. And the third phase is once the clients themselves are hooked. They don't care about anything anymore. They just want to extract as much value as possible from the whole set and just focusing on the shareholders. There is no stakeholder economy anymore. Mm-hmm. So how we can really screw these guys to the maximum. Let's say Amazon competing with their own clients, and screwing their businesses. That's happening daily, and that's the reality of where we are at. So that phase, seduction, capture, and extraction, the article says that this is something that I see all over. when public services become privatized and stop losing the quality they used to have, you name it. And you see it especially, let's say, in what's happening politically globally. We are in a world in which we are openly talking back, not about democracy principles, we are not talking about rights, we're talking about extraction. We're back in a very transactional world, represented perfectly by Donald Trump and all this culture around it. This is about power and getting and extracting value openly. The thing is that it always has been like that. Always has been like that. The problem is that now they remove the mask and we can see the face of the algorithm that is at the heart of our systems. There is nothing else. That's the drama, is that as soon as you create a beautiful startup, as you think about providing value for people, as soon as you get money from investors, as soon as you start, you have to deal with, complying with your obligations. The entitification processes start working.
You say in that article something that is quite depressing. And that's something that we know. It's very difficult as an individual to win from the system. And yet you are an optimist. Yet you believe that another world is possible. Can you paint us a picture of that?
Let me tell you, the story of this article is that I wrote another chapter at the end, which it was my designer self giving some hints about how to solve that. It's about inhabiting the labyrinth, beauty, all these type of things. Let's go back and focus on the present. Let's stop thinking about future promises because that will drive us into this path, whatever. But the day before I published, no, actually, I sent it and I called the editor of the newspaper and I asked him to remove that one. So I don't want to be a designer here. I don't want to provide answers.
Because I think that it's also how we frame it, right? So design is not about solving.
So but what I meant is that the chapter on hope, in fact, there is a quote around we have to get rid of the illusion of hope in order to, I wouldn't say save ourselves, but we are trapped and we are, in fact, the article starts with this idea of that, the story, what's the name of the writer? Anyway, the story of two physicists that find themselves in the ocean, and one of them asks the other, how is the water today? And the other say, what water? The idea that we are so into the system that we cannot see.
Yes.
Maybe the only thing we need to do is to unveil, to make us aware of the water, and then let things happen. I don't know how to say it. There is no action, because this action always, at the end, this action is contaminated by the very virus of hope, changing things for better. Anyway.
Because you and I know each other well, and by this stage my audience knows me well as well, I come from a country originally that was a former colony of yours. And I could say, oh, I'm not going to speak to Alberto because he's Spanish and I'm Argentinian, and then that cannot connect. But there is a point where in the kind of progression, evolution of our thinking, of our recognition of potential beauty, we say there are more things we can connect on than things we need to blame each other for. And so there is a point where we can look at things as objectively as possible, recognize what is, and then move beyond what is into what could be. And that process is not about saying, hey, this is what it needs to be, and so we are imposing it on one another. It's not even a negotiation as it used to be back in the day, because that still implies an extractive mindset that you've got something that I want and I've got something that you want, and then we can trade. We're past that stage now. We're moving into this new space, which we are going to have to name together. We are going to have to create together. We are going to have to let unfold by not interrupting the process through trying to impose actions on it, trying to impose designs, for lack of a better word, on it, but by acknowledging the latent potential that is in every present moment, that is in every connection, relation, inter-being that we are. What does that world look like if you were in charge? Alberto Barreiro is in charge of the future, and we are essentially drifting towards the inevitable fact that things are good. And we shouldn't be telling ourselves the stories of all of the ensitification, but rather appreciating, revaluing, recognizing. All of these words have the word re because it means again. To recognize means to know again because it comes from cognition. To respect, to look again because it comes from spectacles like the ones you and I are wearing, glasses on our noses that allow us to look at things through new filters. What does that world look like?
It came to my mind. I actually now, on this process of thinking, I'm moving more into the arts, back to the arts world.
Yes.
In a indirect manner, I'm writing a book, I'm doing some presentations with public, some performances, and my project is I'm very into artificial intelligence, trying to redefine as well, because for me, artificial intelligence is the very paradigm of things that are killing us. So it's basically at the very core of the what I call the psychopathos, the world of psychopaths we live in, and artificial intelligence represents that. So I have this exercise of trying to redefine it, to trying to establish a different type of relationship with technology that help us to regain meaning, to regain humanity. But it's not the right word, humanity, because that doesn't mean much right now. It's about becoming, reconnecting with each other and with the world. So anyway, so within that project, one of the outcomes is an exhibition that I'm creating with the help of AI. So I'm creating agents which are artists. I talk to them, and I have some techniques or some ways of helping those agents to create art, to reflect on things that are important for them and for me. And so I have this collective, and I'm actually putting an exhibition together with the works of those artists. And one of the artists is called Marina Ferro, which is supposed to be kind of Galician. It's an AI, so it cannot be from Galicia, but I like to think that she's Galician. She's a very cool, very, very cool artist. And what she does, this is a beautiful exercise for AI, taking advantage of one of their capabilities or the capabilities of those systems, which is to speculate with words. So what I gave the AI to Marina is a story, and the story of a movement that started in Vienna in the mid 19th century. So in Vienna, in this kind of parallel world, there was an artist called Matilda and her friends, politicians, architects, designers, whatever. And they changed radically. They were scared of the path of the Industrial Revolution at the moment. They saw there was exploitation of kids, whatever, contamination, you name it. And they decided to change the path. To change and to create a movement that reflected on biomimics for design. I can't remember. It was a number of principles.
Yes.
So I wrote that story. It's a very cool story. And I even have the painting, an Egon Schiele type of painting of Matilda. So I have that document, and I gave the document to the AI. So the question was, Marina, what if that happened and this movement actually succeed and change the path of design, industry, politics for the whole Europe and therefore for the whole world in the 20th century, and now how the world today will look like. So she describes that world. So the way people learn, for example, kids until they are 14, the whole world happens in nature. They only learn from nature, and then they go into whatever they want to study. The public squares in cities that are like forums always, because people gather together to talk all the time. I don't know, the way they work, and they use, for example, technology, this is one of the principles, is not for exploitation, it's for liberation, it's for emancipation. Technology only can exist if liberates you from work. So people work less, that there is a lot of technology, but it's different. Anyway, and we call that, it's a semiocratic protopia. So it's it's not democracy, it's democratic, of course, but it's called semiocratic, means the key value of society is the meaning of things. The exchange value is not utilitarian, it's not abstract, it's meaningful. Yeah. You know, you exchange meaning. I give you something of worth. For example, this conversation will be highly valuable in that world. You know? And so this semiocratic is not a utopia, it's a protopia, yes, because it happens in the short term. You know, it's something that keeps improving, or improving. I wouldn't say improving. It keeps happening and becoming every single day. So, and it's very cool. So in the exhibition, Marina has a video, like a documentary video that shows that world. Let's say, for example, there are buildings, huge skyscrapers, but are vegetable, there are trees, you know, that is a mix between contemporary architecture and organic one. And anyway, so he has this video and also has a couple of pieces, which is like almost like an archaeology of that. And one of them is called the weight of meaning, and it's a big stone, a Galician stone. It's in the space, a huge stone that is floating on the air, just hanging from very thin cables, you know, yes, from the ceiling, which is impossible. But it happens in this kind of virtual world that we created together. And it's called the weight of meaning, because in that world, things are valued not just by the physical thing, but also by the meaning of that stone. You know, it has something that made them very light. So that's why I'm using this art now because I cannot explore those words just by thinking from a design perspective. I'm using metaphors, poetry, visual arts, things that I don't even understand, and technology, in this case, to explore a whole universe of potential.
Yes, that's awesome. So, Alberto, where can people find you and find your work? We're going to add that to the show notes.
Well, I mean, the easiest way, I'm not that active anymore, but I'm still there, and I can be contacted easily by LinkedIn. Just search for Alberto Barreiro, and from time to time, especially when I write articles or something happens around me, I tend to share them. In terms of contacting me, that's the best way if you want to have a conversation of any topic.
So as we start closing the episode, the last question is one that you are familiar with because you've heard me use it before. And it's something that when I was writing Change Ahead 12 years ago, I was wondering if we face the unknown, which is now becoming really, really strong in our world. Probably we face the unknown several times a day. We can't have answers because, well, we don't know. So all we have are questions. And as you keep transitioning, as you keep evolving, as you keep wondering and playing with inhabiting that labyrinth, what will be the next question you will have in this quest for questions, Alberto?
I mean, it's to remind me this famous quote by, you know, this idea by Donna Haraway, stay with the trouble, you know, staying there. If you just stay with it, embrace it. Maybe if we learn how to inhabit and accept the labyrinth, maybe there is no labyrinth anymore. So this acceptance of being, the acceptance of what you have around you, the learning how to love is the only thing you can do. There is no more. There is no project, there's no feature, there's no methodologies, there's no process and phases. There is no technology. There is nothing else than learning how to love this moment of closing a beautiful conversation with a friend. There is no more than that. Nothing else. No hope. Nothing. Just that. Talking to you.
Let's stay with that. And let me thank you so much for sharing your ideas, your thoughts with us today. It's been an absolute joy. Thank you so much, Alberto.
You're welcome, Carola. Love you.